The woman sitting across from me had just watched someone die, and somehow that's what saved my life. Lucas Reed thought he had mastered survival. Wake up, care for his daughter, avoid anything that could crack the armor he'd built around his heart. But when his dying neighbor orchestrated one final act of love, she forced him into a conversation he'd spent years avoiding. What started as an unwanted setup became the moment everything changed. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and stay until the end, because what happens next will break you open in the best way possible. The coffee shop smelled like burnt espresso and disappointment. Lucas Reed sat in the corner booth, checking his watch for the third time in 5 minutes, already calculating his exit strategy. 23 more minutes. That's all he owed Mrs. Park. 23 minutes of polite conversation, a firm handshake, and then back to the life he'd carefully constructed, predictable, manageable, safe. The late afternoon sun cut through the window at a sharp angle, illuminating dust particles that drifted lazily through the air. Outside, the small lakeside town of Mercer Falls moved at its usual unhurried pace. A handful of tourists wandered past, cameras ready, searching for that perfect shot of the water. Locals knew better. The lake was beautiful, sure, but it was the kind of beauty that reminded you of everything you'd lost. Lucas knew that better than most. His phone buzzed, a text from his daughter's school. "Emma had a great day. See you at pickup." He smiled despite himself. Emma, 6 years old, gap-toothed, with her mother's eyes and a laugh that could light up the darkest corners of his chest. She was the reason he got up every morning, the reason he'd learned to function when everything inside him had shattered, the reason he couldn't afford to fall apart again. "Mr. Reed?" Lucas looked up, ready to deliver his rehearsed greeting, and the words died in his throat. The woman standing beside his table looked like she'd been through a war. Not metaphorically, literally. Her dark hair was pulled back in a hasty ponytail, loose strands escaping around her face. She wore navy blue scrubs beneath a worn leather jacket, and there were shadows under her eyes so deep they looked like bruises. Her hands, he noticed, were shaking slightly as she gripped the strap of her messenger bag. "I'm Maya," she said, her voice rougher than he expected. "Maya Collins. I'm sorry I'm late." She didn't wait for him to respond, just slid into the booth across from him with the exhausted grace of someone who'd been on her feet for far too long. Up close, Lucas could see the weariness etched into every line of her face, but also something else. A sharpness in her dark brown eyes that suggested she was cataloging him just as thoroughly as he was studying her. "It's fine," Lucas managed, thrown off balance. This wasn't what he'd expected. Mrs. Park had mentioned a young professional who could really use his carpentry expertise. He'd imagined someone polished, prepared, probably trying to sell him on some renovation project he couldn't afford. Not this. Not someone who looked like they'd just crawled out of the trenches. "No, it's not fine," Maya said, flagging down a waitress with one hand while digging through her bag with the other. "I'm 40 minutes late, I look like hell, and I'm about to drink coffee at 4 in the afternoon, which means I won't sleep tonight, but honestly, that ship has already sailed." The waitress appeared, pad ready. "What can I get you, hun?" "Largest coffee you have, black, actually." Maya paused, seemed to reconsider. "You know what? Make it tea. Something with chamomile. I'm trying to make better choices." The waitress smiled knowingly. "Rough day?" "Rough life," Maya said, but there was no self-pity in her voice, just statement of fact. "But we're working on it." As the waitress left, Maya finally pulled out a manila folder from her bag and set it on the table between them. She stared at it for a long moment, then pushed it aside. "Mrs. Park set this up," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." Lucas felt his carefully prepared speech evaporating. "She said you needed carpentry work done. Something about custom cabinets?" Maya's laugh was sharp and short. "Custom cabinets? Jesus." She rubbed her face with both hands, and when she lowered them, something in her expression had shifted, hardened. "Okay. Cards on the table, I'm going to be honest with you, because I don't have the energy to be anything else right now." Lucas tensed. Here it came. Whatever scheme Mrs. Park had cooked up, whatever well-meaning manipulation she'd orchestrated, it was about to be revealed. He should leave, stand up, make an excuse, and walk out before this became something he couldn't control. But he didn't move. "I'm a hospice nurse," Maya continued, "and Mrs. Park is my patient, has been for the last 3 months." The words hit Lucas like a physical blow. He'd known Mrs. Park was ill. She'd mentioned it in passing, the way she mentioned everything, with that dismissive wave of her hand that suggested death was just another inconvenience to be managed. But hospice meant, how long? The question came out rougher than he intended. Weeks. Maybe a month if we're lucky. Maya's voice was clinical now, the practiced tone of someone who delivered bad news professionally. "She has late-stage pancreatic cancer. We're managing her pain, keeping her comfortable, but there's no—" She stopped herself, seemed to remember she was talking about a human being, not a case file. "I'm sorry, you two are close?" Close. What did that even mean? Mrs. Park had lived next door to Lucas for the past 4 years, ever since he'd moved to the lake house with Emma. She'd been the one to show up with homemade soup when Emma had the flu. The one who watched his daughter when emergencies came up, never asking questions, never expecting payment. The one who sat on her porch every evening, waving at them as they walked to the dock, her presence as constant as the water itself. The one who'd apparently decided to meddle in his personal life with whatever time she had left. "She's my neighbor," Lucas said carefully. "She's been good to us, to my daughter and me." "Emma," Maya said, and Lucas's head snapped up. "She talks about Emma all the time, about how smart she is, how kind, about how you're doing your best, but—" She stopped abruptly, looking like she'd said too much. "But what?" Lucas heard the edge in his own voice. Maya met his gaze steadily. "But you're scared, and fear is a terrible foundation for raising a child." The words landed like a slap. Lucas felt his jaw tighten, felt the familiar walls slamming into place. Who the hell did this woman think she was? She didn't know him, didn't know what he'd been through, what he'd lost, what he'd sacrificed to keep Emma safe and happy and whole. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said, his voice cold and controlled. "I came here because Mrs. Park asked me to discuss a job. If there's no job, then I should go." He started to stand, but Maya's next words stopped him. "I watched someone die this morning." Lucas froze, half risen from his seat. Maya wasn't looking at him anymore. Her gaze had drifted to the window, to the lake beyond, but Lucas had the sense she wasn't really seeing any of it. "Harold Chen," she said quietly, 83 years old, married to his wife Patricia for 61 years. He'd been declining for weeks, but this morning he woke up and he knew. You can always tell when they know. Her hands were wrapped around the empty space where her tea would be, gripping an invisible cup. Patricia was holding his hand. Their children were there. Grandchildren. Even a great-grandchild, this tiny baby who slept through the whole thing. And Harold looked at all of them, and then he looked at Patricia, and he said, "It was worth it. Every single day, it was worth it." Maya's voice cracked on the last words. She cleared her throat roughly, swiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. And then he was gone, just like that. 61 years, and then nothing. She finally looked back at Lucas, and the rawness in her expression made something in his chest constrict. Patricia sat there holding his hand for another 20 minutes. She didn't cry, she just kept talking to him, telling him about their life together, like if she kept the story going, he might still be listening. The waitress returned with the tea, took one look at Maya's face, and quietly retreated. Lucas slowly sat back down. "I drove straight here," Maya continued. "I didn't go home, didn't change, didn't even really process what had just happened. Because Mrs. Park called me last week and asked me to do this, to meet you. And she said," another pause, another breath. "She said it was important, that it mattered. And when you're watching people die every day, you start to believe that if someone says something matters, you should probably pay attention." "I don't understand," Lucas said, and he was surprised by how gentle his own voice sounded. "What does this have to do with me?" "I don't know." Maya picked up her tea, wrapped both hands around the cup like she was trying to absorb its warmth. "She wouldn't tell me. Just said I needed to meet you. That we needed to talk." She took a sip, winced at the heat. "And after this morning, After watching Harold die and Patricia sit there alone with all that love and nowhere left to put it, I thought, what if Mrs. Park knows something we don't? What if she's trying to tell us something before she runs out of time? Lucas felt something shift in his chest, a hairline fracture in the armor he'd maintained so carefully. You think she set us up? I think, Maya said slowly, that a woman who spends her days staring down her own mortality might have a different perspective on what's important, on what risks are worth taking. I don't take risks, Lucas said. Not anymore. Neither do I. Maya's smile was sad, which is probably exactly why we're both sitting here. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The coffee shop hummed around them, the hiss of the espresso machine, the low murmur of other conversations, the clink of cups and silverware. Normal sounds, safe sounds. Tell me about your daughter, Maya said finally. It was the last thing Lucas expected, not tell me about yourself or tell me what happened or any of the other intrusive questions people usually asked. Just tell me about Emma. And somehow that made it easier. She's 6, he began, and felt himself relax fractionally. 1st grade. She's obsessed with dinosaurs right now, not the cute ones. She wants to know about the predators, the hunters. He couldn't help smiling. Last week, she informed me that velociraptors were actually turkey-sized and had feathers, and she was very disappointed that Jurassic Park lied to her. Maya laughed, and the sound transformed her face. Sounds like she's got a good head on her shoulders. She does. She's smart, funny, kind. Lucas paused. She's better than me. I doubt that. Maya's tone was matter-of-fact. But I understand the feeling. When you're responsible for a whole human being, it's terrifying. You're constantly aware of all the ways you could screw them up. You have kids? No. Something flickered across Maya's face. Grief, regret, both, neither. I wanted to once, but life had other plans. She took another sip of tea. Now I take care of other people's parents, other people's grandparents. I hold their hands when their families can't. I listen to their stories, and I watch them leave. That must be hard, Lucas said quietly. It's impossible, Maya admitted, and necessary. And some days I wonder what the hell I'm doing with my life, spending all my time in other people's endings. She set down her cup. But then I meet someone like Harold, and I think, at least I got to witness it. At least I got to see what a life well lived looks like, even if it's just at the very end. Is that what Mrs. Park has? A life well lived? Maya considered this. I think Mrs. Park has a life that taught her what matters. She told me once that she'd lost her husband young, that she'd spent decades alone, raising her son, building a life from nothing. She said loneliness was the price she paid for safety, and by the time she realized safety wasn't worth it, she'd forgotten how to let people in. Lucas felt his throat tighten. She told you that? Hospice patients tell me everything, Maya said. When you're dying, pretending stops seeming important. They tell me their regrets, their secrets, the things they wished they'd said or done or risked. She looked directly at Lucas. Mrs. Park's biggest regret is that she let fear run her life, and her biggest fear now is watching other people make the same mistake. The implication hung between them, heavy and unmistakable. She thinks I'm afraid, Lucas said. Aren't you? Yes. God, yes. He was terrified every single day. Terrified of failing Emma, of losing her, of the million small and large ways he could damage this perfect, innocent person who depended on him completely. Terrified of opening himself up to pain again, of letting anyone pass the walls he'd built, of discovering that everything he'd survived could be ripped away in an instant. But he couldn't say that. Couldn't admit it out loud, not to this stranger, not to anyone. I'm careful, he said instead. There's a difference. Is there? Maya didn't sound confrontational, just curious. Because from where I'm sitting, careful looks a lot like hiding. You don't know me. You're right, I don't. Maya leaned back, studying him. But I know that look in your eyes. I see it in the mirror every morning. It's the look of someone who's been hurt badly enough that survival feels like victory. She paused. And maybe it is. Maybe just getting up every day and putting one foot in front of the other is enough. But Mrs. Park doesn't think so. And honestly, neither do I. Lucas felt anger sparking in his chest, hot and defensive. So what? I'm supposed to just, what? Open up? Take chances? Risk everything I've built because a dying woman thinks she knows what's best for me? No, Maya said calmly. You're supposed to consider the possibility that what you've built is a prison, not a sanctuary. That Emma deserves a father who's actually living, not just surviving. That you deserve more than going through the motions. You have no right. You're absolutely right. I don't. Maya stood up, gathering her bag. This was a mistake. Mrs. Park meant well, but she shouldn't have put either of us in this position. She pulled out a business card, set it on the table. That's my number. If you want to talk more about Mrs. Park's care, or if there's anything Emma might need when the time comes, call me. She turned to leave, and Lucas should have let her go. Should have sat there, finished his now cold coffee, and walked out of this place grateful for the narrow escape. Instead, he heard himself say, "Her name was Sarah." Maya stopped. "My fiancée," Lucas continued, the words coming from somewhere deep and locked away. "Emma's mother. She died 4 years ago. Car accident. We were supposed to get married that spring." Slowly, Maya turned back around. "Emma was 2, Lucas said. Too young to really remember her. Sometimes I'm grateful for that. Other times I hate it because Sarah was—" His voice caught. "She was everything. And Emma will never know her. Will never know what it was like to be loved by her." Maya didn't sit back down, but she didn't leave either. She just stood there, listening. "So yes," Lucas said, "I'm careful. I'm afraid. Because I know exactly how fast everything can disappear. How one moment you're planning a wedding, and the next you're planning a funeral, and the next you're trying to explain to a toddler why mommy isn't coming home, and I can't—" He swallowed hard. "I can't do that again. I can't put Emma through that. I can't survive it a second time." The coffee shop sounds seemed very far away now. The whole world had narrowed to this moment, this confession, this crack in the foundation he'd spent years building. Maya sat back down. "I was engaged too," she said quietly. "His name was David. He was a teacher, 4th grade. He loved his students more than anything." She smiled, but it was the saddest smile Lucas had ever seen. Except maybe me. He loved me so much it terrified me. "What happened?" "I did." Maya's voice was barely above a whisper. "I sabotaged it, picked fights, created problems that didn't exist. Because I was 28 years old, and I'd already seen enough death and loss in my job to know that nothing lasts. That everyone leaves, one way or another. And I thought if I left first, if I was the one who ended it, it would hurt less. Did it? No." The word came out broken. "It hurt more. Because I didn't just lose him. I lost who I could have been with him. I lost the future we could have had. And for what? To avoid pain I experienced anyway?" She shook her head. "That was 8 years ago. And I've spent every day since then keeping people at arm's length, telling myself I'm protecting them, when really, I'm just protecting myself." Lucas understood. God, he understood completely. "Mrs. Park knows all this," Maya said. "About David. About how I live now. She's the first person I've told the whole story to in years. And she said—" Maya's voice cracked. "She said that fear is a slow death. That if I wasn't careful, I'd wake up one day at the end of my life and realize I'd been dying the whole time, just in smaller, quieter ways." "Maybe she's wrong," Lucas said, but he didn't believe it. "Maybe," Maya agreed. "Or maybe she spent enough time at the threshold to see things clearly, to know what matters and what doesn't." They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the sun was starting to sink toward the horizon, painting the lake in shades of amber and gold. Beautiful and terrible, like everything else. "I should go," Lucas said finally. "Emma will be wondering where I am." "Of course." Maya stood again, and this time Lucas knew she was really leaving. "Thank you for being honest with me. I know that wasn't easy." "Wait." Lucas surprised himself. "Have you eaten? Since this morning, I mean?" Maya blinked. "What?" You said you came straight here. That usually means you skipped lunch, maybe dinner too. He found himself standing. There's a diner 2 blocks from here. Nothing fancy, but the food's good. We could, I don't know, continue this conversation or not, just eat. It was insane. He'd just met this woman. She'd torn through his defenses like they were made of paper, dragged confessions out of him he hadn't planned to make, challenged everything he'd built his life around. The smart thing, the safe thing, would be to walk away now before this became something he couldn't control. But Maya had watched someone die this morning, and Lucas had been dying in small ways for 4 years. And maybe Mrs. Park was right. Maybe they both needed to remember what living actually felt like. I need to pick up Emma first, Lucas heard himself say. From school. Would you want to come? She'd probably like to meet Mrs. Park's nurse. She asks about her sometimes. Maya hesitated, and Lucas could see the war playing out across her face. Fear and curiosity, safety and risk, all the same calculations he was making. Okay, she said finally. Yes, I'd like that. They walked out of the coffee shop together into the cooling evening air. Lucas's truck was parked 2 spaces down from Maya's aging sedan. For a moment, they just stood there, 2 damaged people trying to figure out what happened next. Follow me, Lucas said. The school's about 10 minutes away. As he climbed into his truck, Lucas caught sight of his reflection in the rearview mirror. He looked the same as always, tired, guarded, going through the motions. But something felt different. Something had shifted, cracked open, let light in. It was terrifying. It was necessary. Emma was waiting by the front entrance when they arrived, her small backpack almost as big as she was, her teacher standing nearby. She lit up when she saw Lucas, came running across the parking lot with that fearless enthusiasm only 6-year-olds possessed. Daddy! Daddy! Guess what? We learned about the Cretaceous period today, and Miss Anderson said I could do a presentation on... She stopped short, noticing Maya. Who's that? Emma, this is Maya, Lucas said, his hand automatically going to his daughter's shoulder. She's Mrs. Park's nurse. I told you Mrs. Park has been sick? Emma's expression grew solemn. She was young, but she understood more than Lucas sometimes gave her credit for. Is Mrs. Park dying? Maya crouched down to Emma's level, meeting her eyes directly. Yes, she said gently. She is, but I'm helping make sure she's comfortable and not in pain. And she talks about you all the time, about how you're learning to play piano and how you always bring her flowers from your garden. Dandelions, Emma said. Daddy says they're weeds, but Mrs. Park says they're wishes. Maya smiled. Mrs. Park sounds very wise. She is. Emma studied Maya with the unnerving directness of children. You look sad. Did someone you love die? Lucas felt his heart stop, but Maya didn't flinch. Yes, she said quietly. This morning, a man named Harold. He was very old, and he had a good life, and he got to say goodbye to his family. But it's still sad. Emma considered this. When my mommy died, Daddy was sad for a long time. Sometimes he still is, but he tries to hide it. Lucas couldn't breathe. Emma never talked about Sarah, never asked questions, never mentioned her unprompted. He'd assumed she'd forgotten, or that she was too young to really process it. He'd been wrong. It's okay to be sad, Maya said, even for a long time, especially when you lose someone you love. That's what Mrs. Park says, too. Emma looked up at Lucas. She says Daddy keeps his sad locked up so tight it can't get out, but sometimes sad needs to get out so there's room for happy. Lucas felt something break open in his chest. All this time, he'd thought he was protecting Emma, teaching her strength and resilience. Instead, he'd been showing her how to hide, how to lock everything away, how to survive instead of live. Mrs. Park had known, that's why she'd done this. Are you coming to dinner with us? Emma asked Maya. Daddy said we could go to the diner. They have really good grilled cheese. Maya looked at Lucas, a question in her eyes. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. I would love that, Maya said. Grilled cheese sounds perfect. They drove in separate cars to the diner, Emma chattering the whole way about dinosaurs and school and 100 other things. Lucas listened, responded when appropriate, but part of his mind was still back in that coffee shop, still processing everything that had been said and unsaid. The diner was a relic from the 1950s, all chrome and vinyl and checkered floors. They slid into a booth, Emma between Lucas and Maya, and ordered grilled cheese for Emma, a burger for Lucas, soup and salad for Maya. "So you take care of sick people," Emma said, swinging her legs under the table. "That must be hard." "It is," Maya agreed. "But it's also important. Everyone deserves to have someone with them, especially at the end." "Will you be with Mrs. Park when she dies?" "Emma," Lucas started, but Maya shook her head slightly. "If she wants me there, yes," Maya said. "I'll be with her." "Good." Emma picked up a crayon from the cup on the table and started coloring on her placemat. "Because Mrs. Park is nice, and she shouldn't be alone." Their food arrived, and they ate mostly in comfortable silence. Lucas watched Maya interact with Emma, not talking down to her, not treating her like a child who needed protection from hard truths, but engaging with her honestly and directly. Emma, for her part, seemed utterly charmed, asking questions about Maya's work, her car, her favorite color, blue, her favorite dinosaur, Stegosaurus. "That's Daddy's favorite too," Emma exclaimed. "He says they're underrated." "They absolutely are," Maya said seriously. "Everyone focuses on T-Rex, but the Stegosaurus was around for millions of years. That's not luck, that's effective evolutionary design." Lucas found himself smiling, really smiling, for the first time in longer than he could remember. After dinner, they walked Emma to Lucas's truck. The sun had fully set now, and stars were beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. Emma hugged Maya goodbye with the easy affection of childhood, made her promise to come visit again soon. Once Emma was buckled in, Lucas turned to Maya. "Thank you," he said. "For this, for being honest, for everything." "Thank you," Maya countered. "I didn't realize how much I needed this. Normal conversation, normal people, just normal." "We're not normal, Lucas said. "We're both disasters." "Maybe," Maya said. "But at least we're honest disasters." They stood there in the parking lot, two people who'd spent years hiding suddenly standing in full view. It was uncomfortable, vulnerable, real. "Can I see you again?" Lucas asked. "Not because Mrs. Park set it up, just because." Maya was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know if that's a good idea," she said finally. "We're both carrying a lot, and I don't want to mess up what you have with Emma." "Emma likes you." "Emma likes everyone. She's 6. But Maya smiled. "What if we're not good for each other? What if we're just two broken people who make each other worse?" "What if we don't?" Lucas countered. "What if Mrs. Park is right, and we're exactly what each other needs?" "That's a big risk." "I know." Lucas took a breath. "But I've been playing it safe for 4 years, and all it's gotten me is a half-life. Maybe it's time to try something different." Maya looked at him for a long moment, and Lucas could see her weighing it. Safety versus possibility, fear versus hope. "One more dinner," she said finally. "Just us. No Emma, as much as I adore her. Let's see if this is real or if it's just two lonely people grasping at straws." "Okay," Lucas said. "When? Tomorrow?" Maya pulled out her phone. "I have a morning shift, but I'm off by 3. There's a place by the marina that does good seafood." They exchanged numbers, made plans, said awkward goodbyes. Lucas watched Maya drive away, then climbed into his truck where Emma was waiting. "I like her," Emma announced. "She's nice and sad. Like you." "I'm not sad, sweetheart." "Yes, you are." Emma's voice was matter-of-fact. "But that's okay. Maya's sad too. Maybe you can be sad together, and then it won't be so lonely." Out of the mouths of babes. Lucas drove home slowly, the lake house emerging from the darkness as they rounded the final curve. Mrs. Park's lights were on next door, warm and steady. He could see her silhouette in the window, sitting in her usual chair. She'd orchestrated this, brought Maya into his life, forced the conversation, cracked open the door he'd kept locked for so long. She was dying. And with whatever time she had left, she'd chosen to meddle, to interfere, to push. Lucas should have been angry. Instead, as he carried a sleepy Emma into the house, as he tucked her into bed and kissed her goodnight, as he stood on his porch looking at the stars reflected on the water. He felt something he hadn't felt in 4 years. Hope. Terrifying, fragile, dangerous hope. And maybe that's exactly what Mrs. Park had intended all along. The next morning arrived with fog rolling off the lake, thick and gray, swallowing the world beyond Lucas's porch. He stood there with his coffee, watching it drift between the trees, and tried to convince himself that last night had been real, that he'd actually sat across from a stranger and unpacked grief he'd kept buried for years, that he'd invited her to meet his daughter, that he'd asked to see her again, that he'd meant it. Emma appeared at the screen door, still in her pajamas, hair sticking up at odd angles. Is today Saturday? Thursday, sweetheart. Then why aren't you making breakfast? Lucas checked his watch, 6:45. He'd been standing here for over an hour, lost in thought, letting routine slip through his fingers. You're right. Come on, let's get you fed. They moved through the morning ritual, cereal, orange juice, the usual negotiations about whether dinosaur shirts were appropriate for school every single day. But Lucas felt different, like someone had adjusted the frequency of his life just slightly, making everything familiar seem somehow new. Are you thinking about Maya? Emma asked, her spoon halfway to her mouth. Lucas nearly dropped his coffee. What makes you say that? You have the same face you get when you're working on a hard project, like you're trying to figure something out. She took another bite of cereal, completely unbothered. Mrs. Park says grown-ups make things too complicated. When did she say that? Last week. When I brought her dandelions and she asked if you were happy. I said you were fine, and she said fine and happy aren't the same thing. Emma shrugged. I think she's right. Before Lucas could formulate a response, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Maya. Still on for later? The boathouse at 4? His thumb hovered over the screen. This was the moment. He could back out, claim something came up with Emma, return to the safety of his carefully controlled existence. No one would blame him. It was too fast, too risky, too much. I'll be there, he typed, and hit send before fear could stop him. The day crawled by with excruciating slowness. Lucas tried to work. He had a custom bookshelf project due next week, but his mind kept wandering. He measured twice, cut once, and still somehow ended up with a piece that was 3 inches too short. Amateur mistake. The kind he hadn't made in years. At 2:30, he picked up Emma from school and dropped her at his sister Rachel's house across town. Rachel took one look at him and raised an eyebrow. You look terrified, she observed. What's going on? Nothing, just meeting someone. For coffee. Coffee. Rachel's smile was knowing. She'd been after him for years to date, to move on, to stop living like a monk. Does this someone have a name? Maya. And how did you meet this Maya? Mrs. Park set us up. The words felt strange in his mouth. She's Mrs. Park's hospice nurse. Rachel's expression shifted, sympathy replacing amusement. Oh, Lucas, Mrs. Park is dying. I know. He ran a hand through his hair. She has maybe a month, and apparently she decided to spend her remaining time meddling in my personal life. Sounds like something she'd do. Rachel studied him carefully. Do you want to go to this coffee date? No, Lucas admitted, but I think I need to. Then go. Emma and I will have a great time. We're overdue for a tea party anyway. Lucas found himself at the boathouse 20 minutes early, which meant 20 minutes to second-guess everything. The restaurant sat at the edge of the marina, weathered wood and salt-stained windows, the smell of fresh fish and old rope thick in the air. Boats bobbed in their slips, rigging clinking against masts in the breeze. It was the kind of place locals came to feel at home, not to impress anyone. Maya arrived exactly on time, and Lucas felt his breath catch. She looked different in civilian clothes, jeans and a soft gray sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. The exhaustion from yesterday had lifted slightly, though the shadows under her eyes suggested she still hadn't slept much. Hi, she said, sliding into the booth across from him. I almost didn't come. Me too. They stared at each other for a moment, then both laughed, the tension breaking slightly. This is weird, right? Maya said. We barely know each other, but I feel like I told you my entire life story yesterday. The important parts, anyway. Lucas fiddled with his water glass. I keep thinking Mrs. Park is going to jump out from behind a plant, pleased with herself. She would be pleased. Maya's smile was sad. I saw her this morning. She asked how it went. I told her we had dinner with your daughter, and she got this look on her face, like she'd just won the lottery. How is she? Really? Maya's medical mask slipped into place, the professional distance of someone used to delivering hard truths. She's declining faster than I'd like. The pain is manageable with medication, but she's sleeping more, getting weaker. Yesterday, she barely ate anything. Does she know about how fast it's happening? Mrs. Park knows everything. Maya paused as their waitress appeared, took their orders, fish and chips for both of them, beer for Lucas, white wine for Maya. Once they were alone again, she continued. She's incredibly clear-headed about it. No denial, no bargaining, just acceptance. It's actually kind of remarkable. She's remarkable in general, Lucas said. When Sarah died, Mrs. Park just appeared. I didn't even know her name yet. We'd only been in the house for a few weeks. But she showed up with food, offered to watch Emma, never asked questions, just helped. She has a gift for seeing what people need. Maya took a sip of her wine. She told me once that losing her husband taught her to recognize grief in others, that people who've been through darkness can spot it, even when someone's trying to hide it. Is that why she brought us together, because we're both grieving? Maybe. Or maybe she just saw two people who were stuck and decided to unstick them. Maya leaned back, studying him. Do you think it's working? Lucas considered this. 24 hours ago, his life had been a straight line, predictable, contained, safe. Now it felt like someone had introduced curves and variables, possibility and chaos. I don't know yet. Ask me again in a week. Their food arrived and they ate mostly in silence, comfortable with the quiet in a way that surprised Lucas. Usually first dates, and this was a first date there was no point pretending otherwise, required constant conversation, performance, the exhausting work of presentation. But with Maya, the silence felt natural, necessary even. Tell me about Sarah, Maya said eventually. If you want to. Lucas set down his fork. He'd spent 4 years deflecting this question, changing the subject, keeping Sarah locked away where memories couldn't hurt him. But something about Maya's directness made evasion feel pointless. She was a teacher, he began. 2nd grade. She had this way of talking to kids that made them feel like the most important people in the world. Every single one of them thought they were her favorite. He smiled despite the ache in his chest. She probably worked 60 hours a week, between teaching and planning and parent conferences, and she never complained once. She loved it. How did you meet? College. She was studying education. I was studying architecture, before I dropped out to do carpentry full-time. We had a mutual friend who dragged us both to some terrible party, and we ended up sitting on the porch all night, talking about everything except the party. The memory was vivid, painfully clear. I knew that night I was going to marry her. Took me 2 more years to actually ask, but I knew. And she said yes. Eventually, she made me ask 3 times. Said if I wasn't sure enough to be persistent, I wasn't sure enough to get married. Lucas laughed, the sound rough. Sarah didn't do anything halfway. When she committed to something, or someone, it was total. Maya was quiet for a moment. What happened? The accident, I mean. You don't have to tell me if... Drunk driver. 3 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. Sarah was driving home from school. The words came out flat, clinical, the only way he could say them without breaking. Emma was with my mom, thank God. If Emma had been in the car, he couldn't finish the sentence. But she wasn't, Maya said gently. Emma is safe, you made sure of that. I didn't make sure of anything. I got lucky. Lucas pushed his plate away, appetite gone. Do you know what the worst part is? It's not the big things, it's the small ones. The fact that Sarah will never see Emma lose her first tooth or learn to ride a bike or graduate from high school. That Emma's going to have questions I can't answer, memories I can't provide. That Sarah put all this love and time and energy into raising a daughter, and she doesn't get to see how it turns out. But you do, Maya said. And you're making sure Emma knows her mother mattered. That's not nothing, Lucas. It doesn't feel like enough. It never does. Maya reached across the table, hesitated, then placed her hand over his. The contact was electric, grounding. But you're doing it anyway. That's what matters. Lucas looked at their joined hands, this small point of connection. Tell me about David, the teacher you were engaged to. Maya withdrew her hand, wrapped it around her wine glass instead. David was... God, he was good. Not in a boring way, but genuinely good. He saw the best in everyone, believed people could change, dedicated his life to helping kids who everyone else had written off. She stared into her wine. We met at a hospital fundraiser. He was there representing his school. I was there because my hospital administrator made attendance mandatory. We both hated it. Ended up hiding in the coat check room, making fun of the rubber chicken dinner. Sounds romantic. It was, actually, despite ourselves. Maya's smile was bittersweet. He asked me out the next day. I said no. He asked again a week later. I said no again. This went on for a month before I finally agreed to coffee, and even then I was planning my exit strategy before I even sat down. But you didn't leave. No, because he was easy to be with, uncomplicated. He didn't play games or hide what he wanted. He just wanted to be with me. And for a while, that was enough to override my terror. She took a long sip of wine. We dated for 2 years. He proposed on a completely ordinary Tuesday, in my apartment, no grand gesture. Just him, on one knee, saying he wanted to spend his life with me. And I said yes. But you didn't mean it. Maya flinched. I meant it when I said it. But then reality set in. The wedding planning, the merging of lives, the irrevocability of it all. And I started seeing problems everywhere. The way he chewed, his relationship with his mother, his optimism about the world, which I'd loved at first, but now suddenly seemed naive. You were looking for reasons to run. I was manufacturing them, Maya corrected, because I'd spent my entire adult life watching people lose each other. Parents losing children, children losing parents, spouses left behind. And I thought, I actually convinced myself that if I controlled the ending, it would hurt less. Did it? What do you think? Maya's laugh was hollow. I broke it off 3 months before the wedding, gave him back the ring, told him I wasn't ready, that I needed space. He asked if there was someone else. I said no, which was true. The someone else was my own fear, my own inability to believe anything good could last. Did you regret it? Immediately. But by then it was too late. He'd already started moving on, not with someone new, but emotionally. He wished me well. Said he hoped I found what I was looking for. She set down her glass with more force than necessary. The thing is, I had found it. I just couldn't let myself keep it. They sat with that for a while. Two people who'd lost love in completely different ways, one to tragedy, one to self-sabotage, and somehow ended up in the same place. Alone. Afraid. Going through the motions of living without really being alive. Mrs. Park asked me something yesterday, Maya said finally. She asked if I was proud of the life I'd built. And I said yes, because I am. I help people. I'm good at my job. I make a difference. But then she asked if I was happy, and I couldn't answer. What did she say? She said that pride and happiness are different things, that you can be proud of surviving without being happy you're alive. Maya met his eyes. She said you have the same problem. Lucas felt something tighten in his chest. She talks about me? Constantly, about how hard you work, how much you love Emma, how you've built this stable, safe life. Maya paused. And about how she can see you disappearing into it, becoming smaller, like you're trying to take up as little space as possible so the universe won't notice you and take something else away. The accuracy of it stole Lucas's breath. That's exactly what he'd been doing, making himself invisible, unremarkable, nothing worth noticing or destroying. If he didn't want too much, need too much, risk too much, then maybe he could keep what little he had left. She's dying, he said, hearing the anger creep into his voice. And she's spending her last weeks worrying about other people's happiness instead of her own. That is her happiness, Maya said. Lucas, Mrs. Park isn't afraid of dying. She's afraid of watching other people waste their lives. She told me that losing her husband at 45 taught her that time is the only thing we can't get back. And seeing you and me, seeing us both choose fear over life, it breaks her heart. So what? Lucas felt the walls going up again, the familiar defenses. We're supposed to just, what? Fall in love because a dying woman thinks we should? Fix ourselves because she wants us to? That's not how life works. No, Maya agreed. It's not. But maybe we could try being honest with ourselves about what we actually want, instead of what feels safest. What do you want, Maya? She was quiet for a long moment, fingers tracing patterns in the condensation on her wine glass. I want to stop being afraid. I want to believe that something good can last longer than it takes to destroy it. I want... Her voice cracked. I want to be the person David thought I was, the person I was before I learned that everyone leaves. Not everyone leaves, Lucas said quietly. Some people are taken. Is that better? No, it's just different. He signaled for the check. Come with me somewhere. There's something I want to show you. They drove separately to the lake house, Maya following Lucas's truck down the winding roads. The fog had lifted, leaving everything sharp and clear in the late afternoon light. Lucas led her past his house, past Mrs. Park's dark windows. She was sleeping, he knew, or would be soon, down to the dock that stretched out into the water. I come here every night after Emma goes to bed, he said, sitting on the weathered wood. Maya settled beside him, close but not touching. Sarah and I used to talk about living on a lake. She grew up in the city, never had access to water like this. She said it made her feel peaceful, connected to something bigger. So you moved here after she died. 6 months after. I couldn't stay in the house we'd picked out together, couldn't walk through rooms we'd planned to fill with memories. So I sold everything, took Emma, and drove until I found this place. He gestured at the water, the trees, the endless sky. Sarah never got to see it, but I like to think she'd have loved it. I think she would have too. They watched the water in silence, the sun beginning its slow descent toward the horizon. Somewhere across the lake, a loon called out, its cry echoing across the surface. I'm terrified, Lucas said finally. Of this. Of you. Of whatever this is becoming. Me too, but I'm more terrified of staying stuck. Of teaching Emma that fear is a good enough reason to stop living. He turned to look at Maya. Mrs. Park is right. I have been disappearing, becoming smaller, and Emma sees it, even if she doesn't have words for it yet. Kids always see more than we think they do, Maya said. They're like tiny emotion detectives. What are we doing here, Maya? Really? She took a breath. I think we're trying to remember how to be brave, or maybe learning it for the first time. She finally met his eyes. I think Mrs. Park brought us together because she saw something we couldn't see ourselves. Two people who've spent so long protecting themselves that they forgot what they were protecting themselves for. And what happens when she's gone? When we don't have her pushing us forward anymore? Then we push ourselves, or we push each other. Maya's smile was tentative. Or we fall apart and realize this was a terrible idea. But at least we'll have tried. Lucas felt something shift inside him, some long-locked door creaking open. I haven't kissed anyone since Sarah. I haven't let anyone close enough to kiss in 8 years. They leaned toward each other slowly, testing, questioning. The kiss when it came was gentle, uncertain. Two people who'd forgotten how to do this reaching for each other in the growing dark. It lasted only seconds before they pulled apart, breathing hard. That was, Lucas started. Terrifying, Maya finished. Yeah. Want to try again? This time the kiss was longer, deeper, 4 years of loneliness and 8 years of self-imposed isolation crashing together. Lucas felt tears on his face and didn't know if they were his or Maya's or both. When they finally broke apart, the sun had touched the horizon, painting everything gold. I should go, Maya said, but she didn't move. I have an early shift tomorrow. Okay. We should probably talk about this. Figure out what we're doing. Probably. Neither of them moved. Mrs. Park is going to be insufferable, Maya said. Absolutely unbearable, Lucas agreed. They sat there as darkness fell, two broken people trying to figure out how to be whole, not knowing if it was possible but willing to try anyway. Because Mrs. Park was dying, and she'd spent her remaining time trying to teach them that grief was meant to be survived, not lived in. Finally, reluctantly, they stood and walked back to their cars. Lucas watched Maya drive away, her taillights disappearing into the night, and felt the familiar panic rising. This was too much, too fast, too risky. He should call her, say they needed to slow down, retreat to the safety of isolation. Instead, he walked next door to Mrs. Park's house and knocked gently on the door. She answered in her bathrobe, looking frailer than she had just days before, but her eyes were bright and sharp. Lucas Reed, it's late for a social call. I know. I just wanted to say, he paused, searching for words. Thank you for interfering, for pushing, for caring enough to meddle, Mrs. Park smiled. So it went well. I don't know if well is the right word, but it went. He hesitated. Can I ask you something? Why us? Why did you think Maya and I would be good for each other? She leaned against the doorframe, conserving energy. Because you're both hiding from the same thing, the possibility that love might be worth the pain it causes. You lost Sarah and decided safety was better than risk. Maya lost David, or rather, threw him away, and decided loneliness was better than vulnerability. She reached out, patted his arm with surprising strength. But you're both wrong, and you're both miserable, and life is too short to spend it being wrong and miserable. What if we make each other worse? What if we're not actually good together? Then you'll figure it out and move on. But at least you'll have tried. At least you'll have lived. Her expression softened. Lucas, I'm dying, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that the things I regret aren't the risks I took. They're the ones I didn't take. The chances I missed because I was too afraid or too proud or too convinced I had more time. I'm scared, he admitted. Good. That means it matters. She started to close the door, then paused. Emma asked me yesterday if I was afraid of dying. You know what I told her? What? I said no, because I'd already been dying for years, the slow death that comes from not really living. She gestured at herself, at the cancer eating away inside her. This is just the efficient version, but you still have time to choose differently. She closed the door gently, leaving Lucas standing on her porch, her words echoing in his mind. That night, after he'd picked up Emma and tucked her into bed, after he'd stood on his dock watching the stars reflect on the water, Lucas pulled out his phone. Thank you for today, he texted Maya. I know it was messy and complicated and probably a terrible idea. The response came almost immediately. The best things usually are. I want to see you again. With Emma. Without Emma? I don't care. Just again. Tomorrow? I could bring lunch to your workshop if that's not too domestic too soon. Lucas smiled in the darkness. It's probably way too domestic too soon. Come at noon. It's a date. Literally. He set down his phone and looked at the framed photo on his nightstand. Sarah, laughing, caught in a moment of pure joy. For 4 years, he'd kept it there as a shrine, a reminder, a way to keep her present. But tonight, for the first time, he looked at it and felt something besides grief. He felt gratitude. For the time they'd had, however brief. For Emma, the living legacy of their love. For the capacity Sarah had awakened in him, the ability to love fully, completely, without reservation. And for the possibility that maybe, just maybe, he could do it again. Maya arrived at Lucas's workshop the next day carrying 2 paper bags and wearing uncertainty like a second skin. The workshop sat behind the main house, a converted barn that smelled of sawdust and varnish, its walls lined with tools that had belonged to Lucas's grandfather. Through the open door she could hear the whine of a saw, then silence, then footsteps. Lucas appeared in the doorway, wood shavings caught in his hair, safety glasses pushed up on his forehead. He looked surprised to see her, as if some part of him hadn't believed she'd actually come. You're here, he said. You sound shocked. I am, a little. I thought maybe last night. He stopped himself. Never mind. Come in. The workshop was chaos and order simultaneously. Projects in various stages of completion scattered across workbenches, sketches pinned to walls, the skeleton of a bookshelf taking shape in the center of the space. Maya set down the bags on a clear corner of bench. I brought sandwiches, and possibly too much chips. I wasn't sure what you liked, so I got variety. She was talking too fast, nervous energy spilling out. Is this weird? This feels weird. Should I have texted first instead of just showing up? Lucas pulled off his work gloves, set them aside carefully. It's not weird. Or maybe it is, but I don't mind. He moved closer, not quite touching her. I'm glad you came. They stood there for a moment, the air between them charged with everything unsaid. Then Maya reached up and picked a wood shaving from his hair. You're a mess, she said. Occupational hazard. He caught her hand before she could withdraw it, held it gently. I didn't sleep last night. Kept thinking about what Mrs. Park said, about being wrong and miserable. Me too. I drove past my apartment 3 times before I finally went in. Just kept circling, like if I stayed in motion I wouldn't have to think about what I was feeling. And what are you feeling? Maya took a breath. Terrified, but also alive. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm actually present in my own life instead of just observing it from a distance. She squeezed his hand. It's uncomfortable as hell. Yeah. Lucas smiled despite himself. Want to eat? We can sit outside. There's a picnic table that's only mildly covered in sawdust. They settled at the table under a massive oak tree, unwrapping sandwiches and opening bags of chips with the awkwardness of people still learning each other's rhythms. The October sun filtered through the leaves, warm despite the season's turn toward winter. Tell me about this, Maya said, gesturing at the workshop. How did you end up doing carpentry? Lucas took a bite of his sandwich, considering. I was supposed to be an architect. Got into a decent program, did 2 years of theory and design, but I hated it. All these beautiful buildings on paper that would never get built or would get built wrong, compromised by budgets and committees in reality. He shrugged. My grandfather was a Finnish carpenter. He'd take me to job sites when I was a kid, let me help with simple stuff. There was something honest about it. You draw it, you build it, it either works or it doesn't. So you dropped out. My parents were furious, still are probably. But Sarah understood. She said if I was going to spend my life building things, they should be things I could touch. The memory made him smile. She was the first person who made me feel like choosing a different path wasn't the same as giving up. Maya was quiet for a moment, watching him. She sounds like she was remarkable. She is, Lucas corrected himself. I don't know what tense to use. She's gone, but she's also everywhere. In Emma, in this life we're living, in the choices I make every day. That must be exhausting, living with a ghost. It is. He met her eyes. But I didn't know how to stop. Didn't know if I was allowed to. And now I'm sitting here with you, and I feel guilty about not feeling guilty. Does that make sense? Maya nodded slowly. After David, I dated a few times. Nothing serious, just coffee or dinner, and every single time I felt like I was betraying him, which was insane because I was the one who ended it, who sent him away. But guilt doesn't follow logic. How did you get past it? I didn't. I just stopped trying. She picked at her sandwich. It was easier to be alone than to navigate that maze of should and shouldn't, allowed and forbidden. I convinced myself I was being noble, that I was protecting other people from my damage, but really, I was just protecting myself. Lucas understood completely. For 4 years, he'd told himself he was staying single for Emma's sake, that bringing someone new into their lives would be confusing or destabilizing or wrong. But the truth was simpler and more selfish. He was terrified of losing again, of opening himself up to that kind of pain a second time. Mrs. Park called me this morning, Maya said, asked if I'd come by after lunch, said she had something she needed to discuss. She's matchmaking again. Undoubtedly, but also declining. Her blood pressure was low when I checked yesterday. She's eating less, sleeping more. The trajectory is... Maya stopped, shifted to professional detachment. We're looking at weeks now, not months. Lucas felt the news hit him like a physical blow. He'd known, intellectually, that Mrs. Park was dying, but knowing and confronting were different things. Does she know? She knows everything. She asked me yesterday to help her write letters to people she wants to reach before she can't anymore. Maya's voice wavered. One of them is for Emma. The thought of Emma receiving a letter from Mrs. Park after she was gone made Lucas's throat tighten. What does it say? I don't know. She sealed it, but she said Emma would understand when the time was right. Maya reached across the table, took his hand. Lucas, she's not afraid. She's ready. The only thing that's keeping her fighting is making sure the people she loves are going to be okay when she's gone. We're not her responsibility. Maybe not, but we're her choice. And for someone facing the end, that matters. Maya stood up, started gathering their lunch debris. I should go. I told her I'd be there by 1. Can I come? To see her? Maya hesitated. She asked to see me alone first, but maybe after. I think she'd like that. Lucas walked her to her car, and this time when they said goodbye, the kiss was less uncertain. Still tentative, still testing, but with an undercurrent of inevitability that hadn't been there before. After Maya left, Lucas tried to return to work but found his mind circling back to Mrs. Park, to mortality, to the strange mathematics of grief. He was standing in his workshop, staring at the unfinished bookshelf without really seeing it, when his phone rang. Rachel. He almost didn't answer, but his sister was persistent when she wanted something. How was the date? She asked without preamble. It was good, complicated, but good. Complicated how? Lucas moved to the open door, leaned against the frame. Her patient, my neighbor, Mrs. Park, she's the one who set us up. She's dying, Rachel, and she spent her remaining energy trying to fix our lives. That's either incredibly sweet or incredibly manipulative. Both, probably, but it worked. He ran a hand through his hair. I kissed her. Maya. Last night by the lake, and again today. And I feel like I'm betraying Sarah, but also like I'm finally doing something right for the first time in years. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Lucas, can I tell you something you're not going to want to hear? Do I have a choice? No, Sarah is gone, and she would hate, absolutely hate, what you've done to yourself in her name. She was the most alive person I've ever known, and you've spent 4 years practicing how to be dead while still breathing. Rachel's voice was gentle but firm. If she could see you now, she wouldn't want you to choose her memory over your future. She'd want you to live. Really live. You didn't know her as well as you think. I was her maid of honor, Lucas. We talked every week for 3 years. I knew exactly who she was. Rachel paused. Do you remember what she said when you got scared before the wedding? When you almost backed out because you were worried about failing her? Lucas did remember. They'd been in the car 2 weeks before the ceremony, and he'd had a panic attack out of nowhere. Sarah had pulled over, held his face in her hands, and said, She said fear was just love in a scary mask, he whispered, that being afraid of losing someone meant they mattered, that it was worth it. Exactly. So stop using her death as an excuse to stop mattering to anyone. Stop hiding behind her memory. Rachel's voice softened. Emma needs a father who knows how to be happy. And you need to remember that you're allowed to be more than a monument to grief. After they hung up, Lucas stood in the workshop doorway for a long time, Rachel's words echoing in his head. Then he pulled out his phone and did something he hadn't done in 4 years. He opened the photo album labeled Sarah and actually looked at the pictures. There she was, laughing at something off camera, holding newborn Emma with a mix of terror and wonder, dancing at their engagement party, covered in paint after they'd tried to renovate the nursery themselves, living fully and completely in every frame. The grief came, sharp and immediate, but underneath it was something else. Gratitude, relief, permission. He was still standing there, tears on his face, when Emma's school called. She'd thrown up. Could he come get her? Lucas pocketed his phone and headed for the truck, grateful for the interruption, for the immediate need that required nothing but presence. Emma was pale and quiet on the drive home, curled in her booster seat with her backpack clutched to her chest. Lucas got her settled on the couch with a blanket and a bowl nearby, then sat beside her. How are you feeling, sweetheart? My tummy hurts, and I'm cold. She burrowed deeper into the blanket. Is Maya coming over today? Not today. You need to rest. But I like when she's here. She makes you smile different. Lucas brushed hair from Emma's forehead. Different how? Like you mean it. Emma's eyes were already drifting closed. Mrs. Park says Maya is going to be important, that we should be nice to her. When did Mrs. Park say that? Yesterday, when I brought her dandelions after school. Emma yawned. She said lots of things, about how love is scary but good, and how Mommy would want you to be happy. Lucas's breath caught. Emma? I know Mommy's gone, Daddy. I'm not a baby. Emma's voice was drowsy but certain. And I know you're sad about it. But Mrs. Park says being sad forever isn't the same as remembering. You can remember and still be happy. Mrs. Park talks to you a lot, doesn't she? Every day. She tells me stories about when she was young, about Grandpa Park, who died before I was born, about how she was lonely for a really long time, but then she moved here and found us. Emma's breathing was evening out, sleep pulling her under. She says family isn't just blood, it's who you choose. Lucas sat with his daughter as she slept, processing this information. All this time, he'd thought he was protecting Emma from complexity, from hard truths about loss and love. But Mrs. Park had been having honest conversations with her all along, treating her like a full person capable of understanding nuance. And Emma had understood, had been waiting for Lucas to catch up. His phone buzzed with a text from Maya. Can you come over to Mrs. Park's? She wants to see you. Says it's important. Lucas looked at Emma, peaceful in sleep, then texted Rachel. 20 minutes later, his sister arrived to sit with Emma, asking no questions, just squeezing his shoulder as he left. Mrs. Park's house felt different when Lucas entered. Quieter, somehow, despite the medical equipment humming in the corner. Maya met him at the door, her expression unreadable. She's in the living room, Maya said quietly. She's tired, but she's clear. Listen to what she has to say. Mrs. Park sat in her recliner by the window, a blanket over her lap despite the warm afternoon. She looked smaller than Lucas remembered, as if dying was a process of gradual erasure, but her eyes were sharp when they met his. Lucas, sit down. We need to talk. He sat in the chair across from her, acutely aware of Maya hovering in the doorway. Mrs. Park, let me speak first. I don't have the energy for back and forth. She shifted in her chair, wincing slightly. I'm dying. You know this. Maya knows this. Even Emma knows this, though she processes it differently than adults do. Mrs. Park, I said, let me speak. Her voice was firm despite its weakness. I brought you and Maya together for a reason. Not because I'm a meddling old woman with nothing better to do, though that's certainly part of it, but because I've spent the last months of my life watching both of you waste yours. Lucas felt defensive walls rising, but forced himself to listen. You think you're honoring Sarah by staying frozen, Mrs. Park continued, by building this careful, controlled life where nothing can hurt you. But you're not honoring her. You're insulting her memory. Sarah was fearless. She loved completely, risked everything, lived at full volume. And you've turned her death into an excuse to do the opposite of everything she believed in. The words hit like physical blows. You didn't know her. I knew her better than you think. She used to come over here before Emma was born. We'd have tea and she'd talk about you, about the life you were building together, about how excited she was, how scared, how determined to make every moment count. Mrs. Park's eyes were fierce. And she told me once that her biggest fear wasn't dying young. It was you dying emotionally and spending the rest of your life as a ghost. Lucas felt tears burning his eyes. She said that? She loved you enough to worry about what would happen to you if she was gone. And she made me actually promise, that if something happened to her, I would make sure you kept living. Mrs. Park reached for the glass of water on the side table, her hand shaking. Maya moved forward to help, but Mrs. Park waved her away. So that's what I've been doing. Watching you shrink into yourself year after year, waiting for the right moment to intervene. And Maya was that moment. Maya was a gift. A woman as damaged and scared and stuck as you are. Someone who would understand without judgment. Someone who needed saving as much as you did. Mrs. Park took a sip of water. I'm not a romantic. I don't believe in soulmates or destiny, but I believe in recognition. In two broken pieces that fit together in a way that makes both of them stronger. Lucas looked back at Maya, who was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, eyes glistening. "Did you know about this? About her promise to Sarah?" "Not until today," Maya said quietly. "She just told me before you got here." "I need you to understand something," Mrs. Park said, pulling Lucas's attention back. "I'm not doing this to play matchmaker or meddle for entertainment. I'm doing it because I failed someone I loved. My husband died when I was 45, and I spent the next 30 years alone. Not because I couldn't find anyone else, but because I was too afraid. Too convinced that loving again would dishonor his memory. But that's different, yet it's not different at all. It's the same fear, the same excuse, the same slow suicide." Mrs. Park's voice cracked, "And now I'm at the end, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that I was wrong, that those 30 years of loneliness were my choice, my failure, that I could have had love and still honored him, that grief and joy aren't mutually exclusive." Lucas felt something breaking open inside him, years of carefully maintained control crumbling. "I don't know how to do this, how to move forward without feeling like I'm leaving her behind." "You don't leave her behind, you bring her with you." Mrs. Park leaned forward as much as her weakened state allowed. "Sarah lives in Emma, in the work you do, in the capacity you have to love, which she helped create. Moving forward doesn't erase her. It fulfills what she wanted for you." "And what about Emma? What if I bring someone into her life and it doesn't work? What if I hurt her?" "What if you don't?" Mrs. Park countered. "What if you show her that love is worth the risk, that loss doesn't have to mean the end of everything, that her mother's death was tragic, but not the defining moment of your entire existence?" Maya spoke from the doorway, her voice soft. "Emma already knows all of this. She told me yesterday that you're sad but pretending not to be, that she wishes you would let yourself be happy because Mrs. Park says Mommy would want that." Lucas turned to stare at her. "Emma said that?" "She's 6, not stupid," Mrs. Park said. "Children see everything, and right now she's learning from you that love equals loss, that opening your heart is dangerous, that safety is more important than connection. Is that really what you want to teach her?" "No." The word came out broken. "But I don't know how to do anything else." "You start by trying," Mrs. Park said simply. "You let Maya in. You risk getting hurt. You show Emma what bravery actually looks like. You stop using Sarah's death as a shield and start using her life as inspiration." Lucas looked at Maya again, really looked at her. She was terrified too. He could see it in every line of her body, the way she held herself apart, ready to flee at the first sign of real intimacy. Two disasters, Mrs. Park had called them. Two broken people who might make each other worse, or might make each other whole. "I walked out," Lucas said suddenly. "I need to tell you this. I need you to understand what you're getting into." He stood, paced to the window. "After Sarah died, after the funeral, after everyone went home, and it was just me and Emma, I walked out. I left her with my mother, and I drove to the lake, and I sat in my car, and I thought about driving into the water, about just ending it. Because the pain was so enormous I couldn't see past it." Maya's sharp intake of breath was audible, but Lucas didn't turn around. "I sat there for 3 hours. Had the car in drive, foot on the brake, trying to convince myself that Emma would be better off without a father who was this broken, that my mom could raise her, that Sarah would understand." His voice was shaking now. And then my phone rang. It was Emma. She'd convinced my mom to call me, and she got on the phone and said, "Daddy, where are you? I need you." Just that, nothing else. And I realized that you had to stay, Maya finished quietly. That I had to stay. But I've been half here ever since, present but not engaged, going through the motions but not really living. Lucas finally turned to face them. "So if we do this, if we try this, you need to know that I'm still that person, still capable of that darkness, still fighting it every single day." Maya crossed the room slowly, deliberately. "After David, I tried to overdose on sleeping pills. The confession hung in the air, stark and terrible. I didn't take them. Got them out, lined them up on my bathroom counter, wrote a note. But I couldn't do it. Not because I wanted to live, but because I was too afraid of even that final commitment." Her voice was steady, clinical. So I threw the pills away and went back to work and pretended it never happened. And I've been pretending ever since. Mrs. Park was crying now, silent tears tracking down her weathered face. You're both so young. Too young to be this broken. Too young to give up. We haven't given up, Lucas said. We're here. We're trying. Trying isn't enough. You have to commit. You have to risk everything. You have to love like you're not afraid of losing it. Mrs. Park wiped her eyes with a shaking hand. I'm dying, and I'm going to die knowing I wasted 30 years. Don't let that be your story. Don't let fear win. Lucas looked at Maya, saw his own terror reflected back at him. What if we can't do this? What if we're too damaged? Then we fail, Maya said. But at least we fail trying to be brave instead of succeeding at being cowards. Mrs. Park laughed weakly. That's the spirit, sort of. They sat with her for another hour, the conversation drifting to lighter topics. Emma's dinosaur obsession, Maya's terrible apartment, Lucas's workshop projects. But underneath it all was the weight of what had been said, confessions that couldn't be taken back. When it was time to leave, Mrs. Park called Lucas back alone. Maya waited in the car, giving them privacy. There's something else, Mrs. Park said. A letter. For you. But you can't read it until after I'm gone. She handed him a sealed envelope with his name written in her careful script. Lucas took it, felt the weight of it. What does it say? Everything I need you to know. Everything I wish someone had told me when I was your age. Promises I need you to make. She gripped his hand with surprising strength. Don't let me down, Lucas. Don't waste the time you have left. Don't let my interference be for nothing. I won't, he promised, and meant it. Outside, Maya was waiting by her car, looking up at the darkening sky. Lucas joined her, the letter heavy in his pocket. That was intense, she said. That's one word for it. Do you think she's right? About us? Lucas took her hand, laced their fingers together. I think she's right that we can't keep living like this. Whether that means together or just differently, I don't know yet. But I know I don't want to wake up in 30 years and realize I wasted them. Maya squeezed his hand. Emma's sick, right? You should get back to her. Come with me. Not for anything, just to be there. We can watch a movie, make soup, be normal for a few hours. Normal, Maya repeated, testing the word. I'm not sure I remember how to do normal. Me neither. We can figure it out together. They drove separately back to Lucas's house, where Rachel met them at the door with a knowing smile. Emma was awake but groggy, curled on the couch watching cartoons. She brightened when she saw Maya. You came, Emma said. Daddy said you weren't. I changed my mind, Maya said, settling on the couch beside her. How are you feeling? Better? Aunt Rachel made me soup? Emma leaned against Maya with the unconscious trust of childhood. Will you watch with me? Daddy always falls asleep during cartoons. And that's how Lucas found himself in his living room watching animated dinosaurs with his sick daughter and the woman Mrs. Park had brought into their lives. Rachel had quietly left, and the three of them sat together in the gathering darkness, the TV providing the only light. It was simple, ordinary, terrifying in its domesticity. It was perfect. Later, after Emma had fallen asleep and Lucas had carried her to bed, he and Maya stood on the porch watching the stars emerge over the lake. This is moving fast, Maya said. Too fast? Maybe, probably. She turned to face him. But Mrs. Park doesn't have time for slow, and maybe we don't either. Lucas kissed her then, and this time it felt less like fear and more like possibility. When they broke apart, Maya was smiling. I should go. Early shift again tomorrow. Okay. But neither of them moved, both reluctant to end this moment, this fragile beginning. Finally, Maya stepped back, started toward her car, then turned. Lucas? I'm glad she meddled. Mrs. Park, I'm glad she forced this. Me too. He watched her drive away, then went back inside to check on Emma. She was sleeping peacefully, the fever broken, breathing steady. Lucas sat on the edge of her bed for a while, just watching her, this miracle of a person who'd saved his life without even knowing it. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Thank you for today. All of it. Even the hard parts. Especially the hard parts, he typed back. Same time tomorrow? I'll bring lunch again. Your turn to pick the menu. Lucas smiled in the darkness, feeling something he'd almost forgotten how to feel. Not happiness exactly, not yet, but hope. The possibility that maybe Mrs. Park was right, that maybe love was worth the risk, that maybe he could honor Sarah by living instead of surviving, that maybe it wasn't too late to choose joy over fear. The weeks that followed felt like learning to walk on new legs. Lucas and Maya moved toward each other in fits and starts, 2 steps forward and 1 back, progress measured in small surrenders rather than grand gestures. Maya came for lunch most days, sometimes staying for dinner, gradually becoming a fixture in Emma's life in a way that felt both natural and terrifying. Emma accepted her presence with the easy adaptability of children, asking questions without judgment, making space without hesitation. But it was Mrs. Park's declining health that hung over everything, a countdown clock neither of them could ignore. Lucas visited her every evening after Emma went to bed, sitting in the chair beside her recliner while she drifted in and out of sleep. Sometimes they talked, her voice growing weaker each day. Sometimes he just sat there, keeping vigil, bearing witness to her slow departure from the world. "Tell me about your day," she'd say. And Lucas would recount mundane details. Emma's school project, a difficult corner joint in the bookshelf he was building, what Maya had brought for lunch. Mrs. Park would listen with her eyes closed, a small smile on her lips. "You're different now," she said one evening, 3 weeks after that first confrontation. "Lighter, somehow." "I don't feel lighter. I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff." "Good. That means you're not hiding in the valley anymore." She opened her eyes, fixed him with that sharp gaze that cut through pretense. "How is it? With Maya?" Lucas considered how to answer honestly. "Terrifying. We're both waiting for the other shoe to drop, for one of us to realize this is a mistake and run." "But you haven't run." "Not yet. Neither has she." Mrs. Park shifted in her chair, wincing. The pain was getting harder to manage even with medication. "That counts for something." "Does it? Or are we just 2 people too stubborn to admit defeat?" "Maybe both." She reached for his hand, her grip weaker than it had been even a week ago. "Lucas, I need to tell you something. The doctors say I have days now, not weeks. My body is shutting down faster than we expected." The words hit him like ice water. He'd known this was coming, had watched her deteriorate steadily, but knowing and confronting were still 2 different things. "Does Maya know?" "She knows. She's trying to keep me comfortable, but there's only so much she can do." Mrs. Park paused, gathering strength. "I need you to promise me something. When I'm gone, you'll take care of each other. You and Maya and Emma. You'll be a family, even if it's messy and complicated and nothing like what you planned." "Mrs. Park, promise me." Her voice was fierce despite its weakness. "Don't let my death be another excuse to stop living. Don't let it break what we've started to build." "I promise," Lucas said, his throat tight. "But you can't go yet. We need more time. Emma needs to say goodbye properly. Maya needs to remember that death is natural, that it's not always violent or unexpected or wrong, that sometimes it's just the end of a story, and that's okay." Mrs. Park closed her eyes. "Bring Emma tomorrow. Let her see me while I'm still coherent. Let her say what she needs to say." Lucas called Maya as soon as he got home, stood on his porch in the cold November night, and listened to her breathing on the other end of the line. "I know," she said before he could speak. "Her vitals are declining rapidly. I've seen this progression before. We're looking at 48 hours, maybe less. She wants to see Emma tomorrow, to say goodbye." Maya was quiet for a long moment. "Are you ready for that?" "Is Emma?" "No, but she asked, and I can't deny her this." Lucas looked at the stars, the same stars that had watched him contemplate driving into the lake 4 years ago. "Will you be there? When it happens?" "I'll be with her until the end. That's my job. But also," her voice cracked, "I don't know how to do this, Lucas. I've sat with dozens of patients as they died, held their hands, provided comfort. But Mrs. Park is different. She's not just a patient, she's family," Lucas finished. "She's family." They talked until midnight, neither wanting to hang up, both afraid of what tomorrow would bring. Finally, Maya said she needed to try to sleep, that she had to be strong for Mrs. Park. Lucas went inside and stood in Emma's doorway, watching his daughter sleep, trying to find the words to explain that someone she loved was leaving. The next morning, he sat Emma down at the kitchen table over pancakes she didn't want to eat. "Sweetheart, we need to talk about Mrs. Park." Emma set down her fork, her young face suddenly serious. "She's dying soon, isn't she?" Lucas shouldn't have been surprised. Emma saw everything, understood more than he gave her credit for. "Yes, very soon, and she asked if you would come visit her today, to say goodbye." "Will it be scary?" "Maybe a little. She's very weak now, and she looks different than she used to, but she's still Mrs. Park. She still loves you." Emma thought about this, her 6-year-old mind processing mortality in ways Lucas couldn't fully comprehend. Will she hurt? Maya is making sure she doesn't hurt, that she's comfortable. Okay. Emma picked up her fork again, pushed pancake around her plate. "Can I bring her dandelions? She says they're wishes. Maybe if I bring her enough wishes, she'll get better." Lucas felt his heart break. "Sweetheart, Mrs. Park isn't going to get better. That's not how this works. But I think she would love the dandelions anyway." They picked dandelions from the yard, the last stubborn ones clinging to life despite the cold, and walked next door hand in hand. Maya met them at the door, her professional mask firmly in place, but Lucas could see the grief underneath. "She's awake," Maya said quietly, "but tired. Don't expect her to talk much." Mrs. Park was in her bed now, propped up on pillows, the hospice equipment beeping softly around her. She looked impossibly small, as if death was already erasing her from the world, but when Emma appeared in the doorway clutching her bouquet of dandelions, Mrs. Park's face transformed. "My darling girl," she whispered. "Come here." Emma climbed onto the bed carefully, settling beside Mrs. Park like she'd done 100 times before when Mrs. Park had been healthy and they'd read books together. "I brought you wishes." "So many wishes. What shall we wish for?" Emma considered this seriously. "I wish you weren't sick. I wish you could stay." "Oh, sweetheart," Mrs. Park's hand shook as she stroked Emma's hair. "Those are beautiful wishes, but sometimes we have to wish for different things. Can I tell you what I wish for?" Emma nodded, eyes wide. "I wish for you to be brave, to love people even when it's scary, to remember that saying goodbye doesn't mean forgetting." Mrs. Park paused, breathing labored. "And I wish for you to take care of your daddy. He's going to be sad when I'm gone, and he's going to need you to remind him that it's okay to be happy again." "Like with Maya?" "Exactly like with Maya," Mrs. Park smiled. "You like Maya, don't you?" "I love Maya," Emma said simply. "She makes Daddy smile for real, and she talks to me like I'm a person, not just a kid." "Then you do me a favor. When I'm gone, and your daddy gets scared and tries to push Maya away, you remind him that love is worth it. Can you do that?" "I can do that," Emma promised solemnly. They sat together for a while longer, Emma chattering about school and dinosaurs while Mrs. Park listened with her eyes closed, a peaceful expression on her face. Finally, Emma kissed her cheek and climbed down from the bed. "I love you, Mrs. Park." "I love you too, Emma. So much." Mrs. Park's eyes opened, focused on Lucas standing in the doorway. "Take care of her. Take care of each other." Lucas led Emma out, his vision blurred with tears. In the hallway, he knelt down to Emma's level. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Emma threw her arms around his neck. "She's not coming back, is she?" "No, baby, she's not. But she'll still be there, like Mommy, in our hearts and memories." Lucas held his daughter tight, marveling at her resilience, her capacity to understand loss without being destroyed by it. "Yes, exactly like Mommy." Maya came out then, professional composure cracking. "She wants to see you alone, Lucas, just for a minute." Lucas settled Emma in the living room with a coloring book, then returned to Mrs. Park's bedside. She looked worse than she had even 15 minutes ago, the life visibly draining from her. "I'm scared," Lucas admitted, sitting beside her. "I know I shouldn't be. You're the one dying, but I'm terrified of doing this without you, of messing it up with Maya, of failing Emma." "You won't fail." Mrs. Park's voice was barely audible. "You're braver than you think. You just needed someone to remind you. She gestured weakly toward her nightstand. The letters, 3 of them. One for you, one for Maya, one for Emma. Maya knows where they are. Don't read yours until after I'm gone. Mrs. Park, no crying yet. I'm not dead yet. She managed a smile. But when I am, you grieve properly. You let yourself feel it. And then you let it go, and you choose life. You choose Maya. You choose happiness. You promise me. I promise. And Lucas? Sarah would be proud of you. Of the father you've become. Of the man you're becoming again. Her eyes drifted closed. Now go. Spend time with your daughter. Let Maya do her job. I'll be here a while longer yet. Lucas found Maya in the kitchen, staring out the window at nothing. He came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, felt her lean back into him. I hate this, she whispered. I hate watching her leave. I hate that I can't fix it. You're not supposed to fix it. You're just supposed to be here. Is that enough? It's everything. They stood like that for a long moment before Maya turned in his arms. Take Emma home. I'll stay with her. I'll call you when it's time. The call came at 3 a.m, 2 days later. Lucas had been half asleep on the couch, unable to face his empty bed, when his phone rang. He didn't need to check the caller ID to know what it meant. He called Rachel, who arrived 20 minutes later to stay with Emma. Then he drove next door through the pre-dawn darkness, his hands shaking on the wheel. Maya met him at the door, her eyes red but her voice steady. She's still here. Barely. But she asked for you. Mrs. Park was barely conscious, her breathing shallow and irregular. Lucas took her hand, felt how cold it had become. I'm here, he said. It's okay to go. We'll be okay. I promise we'll be okay. She couldn't speak anymore, but her fingers tightened slightly around his. Maya stood on the other side of the bed, monitoring vitals with professional detachment, even as tears streamed down her face. Thank you, Lucas said to Mrs. Park, for everything, for caring, for interfering, for teaching me that I was allowed to live again. His voice broke. I won't waste it. I won't waste what you've given us. Mrs. Park's breathing changed, became slower, more labored. Maya checked her watch, made a note on her chart with shaking hands. It won't be long now, Maya whispered. They sat with her as the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Somewhere, a bird began to sing. The world was waking up, indifferent to the small death happening in this quiet room. Mrs. Park's breathing stuttered, stopped, started again, then stopped for good. Maya checked for a pulse, found nothing, and made another note. Time of death, 5:47 a.m. Then the professional mask shattered, and she collapsed into Lucas's arms, sobbing. He held her while she broke, while the grief she'd held at bay crashed over them both. They cried together in the growing light, two people who'd learned about loss from different angles, now sharing the same one. Later, after the calls had been made and the procedures completed, after Mrs. Park's body had been taken away and the house stood empty and silent, Maya and Lucas sat on her porch watching the lake. She was ready, Maya said. At the end, she was peaceful. That's all we can ask for. It doesn't make it hurt less. No, but it makes it matter more. Maya leaned against him. She left letters for all 3 of us. Should we read them now? Lucas thought about his promise, about Mrs. Park's final request. Together, we should read them together, with Emma. They walked back to Lucas's house as the sun fully emerged, finding Emma awake and sitting with Rachel at the kitchen table. Emma took one look at their faces and understood. Mrs. Park died, she said. Yes, sweetheart. A little while ago, peacefully. Lucas knelt in front of her. She left something for you, for all of us. Rachel quietly excused herself as Maya retrieved the 3 letters from her bag. They sat at the table together, Lucas, Maya, and Emma, and opened their envelope simultaneously. Emma's was written in simple language, Mrs. Park's handwriting shaky but legible. Maya read it aloud for her. My dearest Emma, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. But I want you to know something important. Death isn't the end of love. I will always love you, even from wherever I am now. You are the bravest, kindest, smartest girl I've ever known. Take care of your daddy, remind him to be happy. And when he and Maya get married, save me a dance at the wedding. Love always, Mrs. Park. Emma clutched the letter to her chest. She thinks you're going to get married. She did, Maya said softly, her own letter still unopened in her hands. Lucas opened his next, hands trembling. The letter was longer, several pages in Mrs. Park's careful script. Lucas, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And you're probably scared, probably thinking about retreating back into that safe, small life you'd built. Don't. You promised me you wouldn't, and I'm holding you to it even from beyond the grave. You are not broken beyond repair. You are not too damaged to love again. Sarah's death was a tragedy, but it doesn't have to define your entire existence. You have been given a second chance. With Maya, with Emma, with life itself. Don't squander it out of fear. Don't let my death become another excuse to hide. Maya is fragile and scared and just as damaged as you are. She will probably try to run at some point. Don't let her. Fight for her the way you wish you could have fought for Sarah. Show Emma what real love looks like, messy and imperfect and worth every risk. I'm not afraid of dying, Lucas. I'm only afraid that I failed to convince you that living is worth it. Prove me wrong. Be happy. It's what Sarah would have wanted. It's what I want. It's what you deserve. With all my love and all my meddling, Mrs. Park. Lucas couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. He passed the letter to Maya with shaking hands and watched her read it, watched tears stream down her face. Finally, Maya opened her own letter, read it silently, then pressed it to her chest. What does it say? Lucas asked. Maya's voice was barely above a whisper. It says that I have been given something precious, a man who understands loss, a child who needs a mother's love, a chance to build the family I threw away 8 years ago. It says, her voice broke. It says that fear killed my first chance at happiness, but only if I let it kill this one too. That Lucas will try to protect me from his grief, but I have to let him grieve. That Emma will test me, but I have to stay. That love is terrifying but necessary, and that I'm stronger than I think I am. She looked up at Lucas, her eyes bright with tears. She says that if I run, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. That she wasted 30 years being afraid, and she won't watch me do the same. Emma reached across the table, took both their hands. Mrs. Park was really smart. She was, Lucas agreed, the smartest person I've ever known. They sat there together as morning turned to afternoon, reading and rereading the letters, processing grief and hope in equal measure. Eventually, Rachel returned to check on them, took one look at the scene, and quietly started making lunch. None of them would eat. The funeral was held a week later on a cold November day, the sky heavy with clouds that threatened snow. The small church was packed with people Lucas had never met, former students of Mrs. Park's son, neighbors from her old neighborhood, fellow volunteers from various charities. Each of them had a story about how she'd changed their life, helped them through hard times, refused to let them give up. She'd been doing this forever, Lucas realized, collecting broken people and putting them back together. He and Maya were just the latest in a long line of lives she'd refused to let waste away. Emma sat between Lucas and Maya during the service, holding both their hands, occasionally leaning against one or the other when the grief became too heavy. Lucas watched his daughter process loss with a grace that astounded him, crying when she needed to, but also listening intently to the stories about Mrs. Park's life. At the graveside, as they lowered Mrs. Park's casket into the ground, Emma stepped forward and placed a single dandelion on top. "That's a wish," she announced to everyone gathered. "That Mrs. Park knows we love her, that she's happy wherever she is now." Maya made a sound that was half sob, half laugh, and Lucas pulled both her and Emma close. They stood there together as the first snowflakes began to fall, a family in everything but name, bound together by a woman who'd spent her final days ensuring they wouldn't face the future alone. That night, after Emma had finally cried herself to sleep, Lucas and Maya sat on his porch wrapped in blankets, watching the snow accumulate on the lake. "I keep expecting to see her light on next door," Maya said. "To remember I need to check on her. I know, the house feels wrong without her in it." "She left it to me," Maya said suddenly. "The house. Her lawyer called today. She changed her will 3 months ago, right after I became her nurse. Left me the house and everything in it. Lucas turned to stare at her. She what? She said in the will that I needed roots, that I'd spent too long living in temporary spaces, ready to run at any moment, that having a permanent home would force me to commit to something. Maya laughed shakily. Even in death, she's meddling. Are you going to take it? I don't know. It feels like too much, like I don't deserve it. Or maybe it's exactly what you need. Lucas took her hand. Mrs. Park didn't do anything without purpose. If she left you the house, there was a reason. Maya was quiet for a long time. It would mean staying, really staying, no more running when things get hard. Is that what you want? To stay? She turned to face him, snowflakes catching in her hair. I'm terrified. Every instinct I have is screaming at me to run before this gets too real, too complicated, too painful. But I promised her I wouldn't, and I promised myself I'd try to be brave. Maya squeezed his hand. So yes, I want to stay, even though it scares me, even though I might mess it up. I want to try. Lucas kissed her then, snow falling around them, grief and hope tangled together in a way that felt both heartbreaking and right. When they pulled apart, Maya was crying again. She knew, Maya whispered. Mrs. Park knew this would happen, that we'd need each other after she was gone, that we'd have to choose each other every day, consciously, despite the fear. She was annoyingly perceptive. She was trying to save us. Maya stood, pulled Lucas to his feet. Come here. I want to show you something. She led him next door to Mrs. Park's house, her house now, and unlocked the door. Inside, everything was exactly as Mrs. Park had left it. But on the kitchen table was another envelope with both their names on it. I found it yesterday when I was going through her things, Maya said. I waited to open it because I thought we should read it together. Inside was a single page, Mrs. Park's handwriting more shaky than in the previous letters. Lucas and Maya, if you're reading this together, it means you didn't run. It means you chose each other despite everything I know you're feeling. I'm proud of you both. Now comes the hard part, building a life together. It won't be easy. You'll fight, you'll doubt. You'll have moments where fear wins and you'll hurt each other. But you'll also have moments of profound joy, of connection, of love that transforms you both. Emma will be your anchor and your challenge. She'll need you both in different ways, and you'll have to learn to be a team. Don't try to replace what you lost. Don't try to be Sarah or David or anyone else. Just be yourselves, damaged, scared, and trying. That's enough. One final request. When you get married, and you will get married even if you're both too stubborn to admit it yet, scatter some of my ashes by the lake. I want to be part of the place where you learn to choose joy over fear. With all my interfering love, Mrs. Park. They stood in the silent house, reading and rereading the letter. Finally, Maya laughed, the sound watery but genuine. She really did plan everything, didn't she? Right down to our wedding, apparently. Is she right? Maya asked. Will we get married? Lucas considered this. A month ago, the thought would have been impossible. Now, standing in Mrs. Park's house with snow falling outside and grief still fresh in his chest, it felt inevitable. I think she usually was, he said, about most things. That's not an answer. No, Lucas agreed, but it's the truth. They locked up the house and walked back through the snow, Emma still sleeping peacefully in Lucas's home, unaware that her life was being rebuilt around her. At the door, Maya hesitated. I should go, give you space. Or you could stay. Lucas held her gaze. Not for just to not be alone. We could both use that right now. Maya nodded, and they went inside together. Lucas checked on Emma, found her curled around her stuffed triceratops, Mrs. Park's letter clutched in one small hand. He pulled the blanket up, kissed her forehead, and returned to find Maya standing in the living room looking lost. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. How to be part of this. Part of you and Emma. Neither do I, Lucas said. But we promised we'd try. They sat on the couch, not talking, just being present with each other in their shared grief. Eventually, Maya fell asleep against his shoulder, and Lucas sat there in the darkness thinking about Mrs. Park's final request. Scatter her ashes by the lake, where they'd learned to choose joy over fear. They hadn't chosen joy yet, but they'd chosen possibility. They'd chosen to try. And maybe, Lucas thought as he finally let his own eyes close, maybe that was enough for now. Maybe that was all Mrs. Park had really wanted, for them to keep choosing, keep trying, keep moving forward even when fear screamed at them to stop. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering everything in white, erasing the old world and making space for something new. The first weeks after Mrs. Park's death were harder than Lucas had anticipated. Grief settled over the house like fog, thick and disorienting, making even simple tasks feel insurmountable. Emma would cry at unexpected moments, in the grocery store when she saw dandelions in the floral section, at bedtime when she remembered Mrs. Park wouldn't be there to wave goodnight from her window. Lucas held her through it all, his own grief a constant weight in his chest, wondering if he was doing any of this right. Maya came over every evening after her shift, still uncertain of her place, but unwilling to abandon them. She'd help with dinner, sit with Emma while Lucas cleaned up, stay until the house felt less empty. But there was a tentativeness to her presence, a hesitation that suggested she was still waiting for permission to really belong. It was Emma who finally forced the issue. 3 weeks after the funeral, she appeared in the kitchen doorway while Lucas and Maya were washing dishes, her stuffed triceratops clutched under one arm. "Maya, are you my mom now?" The plate Maya was holding slipped from her hands, crashed into the sink. Lucas froze, dish towel suspended midair, both of them staring at Emma in shock. Maya's voice failed her. She looked at Lucas desperately, but he had no idea what to say either. Emma walked further into the room, her expression serious in the way only children could be when asking questions that terrified adults. "Because Mrs. Park said you would be. In her letter. She said you were going to be my family." Maya knelt down slowly, meeting Emma at eye level. "Sweetheart, I could never replace your mom. Sarah will always be your mom, even though she's gone." "I know that," Emma said, with the patience of someone explaining something obvious. "But people can have more than one mom, right? Like how some kids have a mom and a stepmom. You're not trying to be my first mom. You'd be my second mom." Lucas felt something crack open in his chest. He'd been so focused on protecting Emma from confusion, from feeling like Maya was erasing Sarah, that he'd never considered Emma might be capable of holding space for both. "Is that what you want?" Maya asked, her voice shaking. "For me to be your second mom?" Emma thought about this carefully. "Do you want to be?" Maya's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, if you'll have me. If your dad thinks it's okay, yes." Emma turned to Lucas, waiting for confirmation. He managed to nod, too overcome to speak. "Okay then," Emma said matter-of-factly. "You're my second mom. But you have to live here if you're going to be my mom. Moms don't live in different houses." Maya laughed, the sound breaking into a sob. "That's a pretty big decision, Emma. Your dad and I would need to talk about—" "Mrs. Park said you'd make it complicated," Emma interrupted. "She said grown-ups always make love complicated when it should be simple." "Do you love us?" "Yes," Maya whispered. "So much." "Then it's simple. You should live here." Emma hugged Maya quickly, then headed back toward her room. At the doorway, she paused. "Also, Mrs. Park said to remind Daddy that life is short and he shouldn't waste time being scared. So stop being scared, Daddy." She disappeared down the hallway, leaving Lucas and Maya staring at each other in the sudden silence. "Did our 6-year-old just propose on our behalf?" Maya asked. "I think she did." Lucas set down the dish towel, crossed to where Maya still knelt on the floor. "Emma's right. I have been scared. Still am scared. But I'm more scared of losing this. Of losing you. Because I was too much of a coward to ask you to stay." "Lucas, move in with us," he said. "Not because Emma wants you to, though that's a pretty compelling argument, but because I want you here, because coming home to you every day feels right in a way I didn't think I'd ever feel again. Because you're already part of this family, and pretending otherwise is just wasting time we don't have to waste." Maya stood slowly, her hands trembling. "What if I mess this up? What if I'm terrible at being a second mom? What if you're exactly what we need? Lucas countered. What if Mrs. Park was right about everything? What if fear is the only thing standing between us and something extraordinary? I don't have an extraordinary track record with commitment. Neither do I. My last relationship ended with my fiancée dying. Lucas took her hands. We're both disasters. But maybe we're disasters who are better together than apart. Maya looked toward the hallway where Emma had disappeared, then back at Lucas. She really just called me her second mom. She did. And you're okay with that? I'm terrified of it. But yes, I'm okay with it. More than okay. Lucas pulled her closer. Sarah would have liked you, you know. She would have appreciated how you don't talk down to Emma, how you're honest even when it's hard. She would have, his voice caught. She would have wanted this for us, for Emma to have someone who loves her like you do. How do you know I love her? Because I see the way you look at her, the way you remember her favorite dinosaur and bring her books about paleontology, the way you held her when she cried about Mrs. Park and didn't try to make it better, just let her feel it. Lucas smiled through his own tears. You love her the way Sarah would have loved her, completely. Maya was crying openly now. I'm going to mess this up so badly. Probably. I will too. We'll both mess it up constantly. He kissed her forehead. But we'll mess it up together, and that's what matters. She kissed him then, salt from tears mixing with something that felt like hope, like possibility, like the future Mrs. Park had tried to give them. When they pulled apart, Emma was standing in the doorway again, grinning. Does this mean Maya's moving in? When did you come back? Lucas asked. I never left. I was listening the whole time. Emma's grin widened. So, is she? Maya looked at Lucas, then at Emma, then back at Lucas. I need to give notice at my apartment, pack my things. There's logistics and... That's a yes, Emma squealed and ran over to hug them both. Mrs. Park was right. She's always right. Was right, Lucas corrected gently. She's gone now, sweetheart. No, she's not, Emma said with absolute certainty. She's still here. She's in the dandelions and the lake and in us choosing to be happy. That's what she told me. That love doesn't die, it just changes shape. Lucas met Maya's eyes over Emma's head, both of them undone by a 6-year-old's wisdom. The next weeks were a blur of cardboard boxes and furniture rearranging, of Maya gradually claiming space in the house that had been only Lucas and Emma's. Her medical textbooks joined his carpentry manuals on the shelves. Her coffee mugs mingled with his in the cabinet. Her clothes hung in the closet next to his, intimate and domestic and absolutely terrifying. But it was the small moments that transformed the house into a home. Maya helping Emma with homework at the kitchen table while Lucas cooked dinner. The three of them taking evening walks to the dock, Emma insisting on holding both their hands. Movie nights, where Emma fell asleep between them on the couch. Saturday morning pancakes where they all competed to see who could make the most ridiculous dinosaur shape. It wasn't always smooth. Maya had nightmares sometimes, waking in a panic from dreams about patients she'd lost. Lucas still had days where grief for Sarah hit him like a wave, leaving him quiet and distant. Emma tested boundaries, pushing to see if Maya would stay when things got hard. 2 months after Maya moved in, Emma had a complete meltdown over homework, screaming that she hated math and hated school and hated everything. Maya tried to help, which only made it worse. Emma turned on her with the calculated cruelty only children could muster. You're not my real mom. You can't tell me what to do. Lucas saw Maya flinch like she'd been struck. She stood up from the table, her face carefully blank, and walked out to the porch. Lucas finished calming Emma down, got her through the homework, and sent her to her room to cool off. Then he went to find Maya. She was sitting on the porch steps, arms wrapped around her knees, staring at the lake. Lucas sat beside her silently. I knew this would happen, Maya said finally. I knew she'd eventually use it against me, that I'm not Sarah, that I don't have the right to parent her. She's 6 and she was frustrated. She didn't mean it. Didn't she? Maya turned to look at him. Because she's right, Lucas. I'm not her real mom. I'm just someone who moved in. Someone playing house. Is that what you think this is? Playing house? I don't know what this is, Maya admitted. I love you both so much it terrifies me. But What if Emma's right? What if I don't have the right to discipline her or make rules or be a parent to her? What if I'm overstepping? Lucas took her hand. You have every right because we've given it to you. Because you're here every day, showing up, trying. Because you read her bedtime stories and help with her homework and hold her when she cries. That's what makes you her mom. Not biology, choice. She told me I'm not her real mom. And tomorrow she'll apologize because we're going to have a conversation about how words hurt, about how families are built on respect, even when we're angry. He squeezed her hand. Maya, you're going to have moments where you doubt this. Where Emma says something cruel or I pull away or it all feels like too much. That's normal. That's family. I've never had normal family. Neither have we, not since Sarah died. We're building something new together. It's going to be messy and imperfect and sometimes really hard, but it's ours. Maya leaned against him. I almost left. When Emma said that, my first instinct was to pack my bags and go back to my apartment, to prove her right before she could reject me completely. But you didn't leave. No. Because I promised Mrs. Park I wouldn't run, and because... She paused. Because this is my family now, and you don't abandon family just because things get difficult. They sat there as the sun set over the lake. The same lake where Lucas had first told Maya about Sarah, where they'd first kissed, where they were slowly building a life that honored the past without being imprisoned by it. After a while, the porch door opened and Emma appeared, her eyes red from crying. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I didn't mean it. You're my real mom, my second mom, and I love you. Maya opened her arms and Emma ran into them, both of them crying. Lucas watched his daughter and the woman he loved hold each other and felt something settle in his chest. This was right. Complicated and messy and sometimes painful, but right. Winter melted into spring, and with it came a gradual thawing of the grief that had held them all frozen. Emma turned 7, celebrated with the dinosaur-themed party where Maya helped her build a volcano that actually erupted. Lucas finished the bookshelf he'd been working on, installed it in Emma's room, and watched her fill it with books about paleontology and space and adventure. One evening in late April, as they sat on the dock watching the sunset, Emma asked when they were going to scatter Mrs. Park's ashes. She said to do it by the lake, Emma reminded them. In her letter, remember? Lucas and Maya exchanged glances. Mrs. Park's ashes had been sitting in an urn on the mantel for months, waiting for the right moment. You're right, Maya said. We should do it soon, before summer comes. They chose a Saturday morning, just the 3 of them. Lucas carried the urn, Maya held Emma's hand, and they walked down to the dock together. The lake was calm, reflecting the sky like glass, and the air smelled of pine and water and possibility. Should we say something? Emma asked. You go first, sweetheart, Lucas said. Emma thought for a moment. Thank you, Mrs. Park, for making my daddy happy again, and for bringing Maya to us, and for all the dandelions and stories and love. I miss you, but I'm glad you're not hurting anymore. Maya went next, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you for refusing to let me hide, for seeing what I needed before I could see it myself, for being the family I didn't know I was looking for. I promised to take care of them. I promised to stay. Lucas was last. He opened the urn, held it carefully. Thank you for keeping your promise to Sarah, for making sure I didn't waste the life she wanted me to have, for Emma, for Maya, for this family, for teaching us that love is worth the risk. He paused, looking at the ashes. I hope you're at peace. I hope you know we're going to be okay. Together, they scattered the ashes over the water, watched them catch the light as they drifted down, merging with the lake that had been the backdrop for their transformation. Emma threw a handful of dandelion seeds after them. Wishes, she said. So Mrs. Park can make wishes wherever she is. They stood there for a long time, hands linked, the family that grief and love and one stubborn woman's meddling had created. Finally, Emma tugged on their hands. Can we get pancakes now? Mrs. Park always said important moments should be celebrated with food. They drove into town, to the same diner where Lucas and Maya had first eaten with Emma, where everything had started to feel possible. Over pancakes and coffee and orange juice, Emma announced that she'd been thinking about something important. "You two should get married," she said, drowning her pancakes in syrup. Lucas choked on his coffee. Maya's fork clattered to her plate. "Emma," Lucas started. "Mrs. Park said you would," Emma continued, unbothered by their reactions. "In her letter, she said when you get married, scatter her ashes by the lake. We did the ashes part. Now you should do the marriage part." "Sweetheart, that's not really how it works," Maya said. "Why not?" Emma looked between them with the devastating logic of children. "You love each other. You live together. You're already a family. Marriage is just making it official." "It's more complicated than that," Lucas said. "No, it's not. You're making it complicated because you're scared." "But Mrs. Park said being scared isn't a good enough reason not to do something." Emma took another bite of pancakes. "So stop being scared and get married already." After breakfast, as they drove home, Emma fell asleep in the back seat. Lucas glanced at Maya, who was staring out the window with an unreadable expression. "She's not wrong," he said quietly. "About which part?" "All of it. We are scared. We are making it complicated, and—" He paused. "And I do want to marry you." Maya turned to look at him. "Lucas, I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring things out, but I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to raise Emma together. I want to build something permanent instead of just trying to survive." He pulled over to the side of the road, put the car in park. "I don't have a ring. I haven't planned some elaborate proposal, but I love you, Maya, and I want to marry you. If you'll have me." Maya was crying, tears streaming down her face. "Yes. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I want to spend my life with you. Yes to all of it." She laughed through her tears. "Mrs. Park is going to be so smug about this." "She absolutely would be," Lucas agreed, pulling her into a kiss. From the back seat, Emma's sleepy voice said, "I knew it. Mrs. Park is always right." They got married 3 months later on a warm July evening by the lake. It was a small ceremony, just family and close friends, the intimate gathering of people who'd watched them struggle and heal and choose each other despite everything. Rachel stood as Maya's maid of honor, fighting back tears through the whole ceremony. Emma was the flower girl, scattering dandelion seeds instead of rose petals, making everyone smile through their crying. Lucas stood at the makeshift altar his sister had helped him build, watching Maya walk toward him in a simple white dress, and felt the ghost of Sarah standing beside him, smiling. She would have loved this, he realized, would have loved Maya, loved seeing him happy again, loved knowing Emma had found someone else to love her fiercely. When Maya reached him, she took his hands and whispered, "We're really doing this." "We really are," he whispered back. "No running." "No running," she agreed. The officiant, an old friend of Mrs. Park's who'd insisted on performing the ceremony, smiled at them both. "We gather here today to celebrate a love that was built from loss, strengthened by grief, and chosen consciously every single day. Lucas and Maya have written their own vows." Lucas went first, his voice steady despite the emotion churning in his chest. "Maya, you came into my life when I'd given up on the possibility of loving again. You saw my brokenness and didn't try to fix it. You shared your own damage and made me feel less alone. You love my daughter like she's your own. You challenge me to be better, and you remind me every day that life is meant to be lived, not just survived. I promise to choose you every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I promise to be your partner in everything, in joy and grief, in adventure and ordinary moments, in building the family we both thought we'd lost. I promise to love you for the rest of my life." Maya's hands shook as she began her vows. "Lucas, you taught me that running from fear doesn't make it go away. It just makes you lonely. You showed me what real courage looks like, showing up every day for the people you love, even when your heart is breaking. You gave me a family when I didn't think I deserved one, and you loved me through all my broken pieces. I promise to stay even when my instinct is to flee. I promise to love Emma as my own, to honor Sarah's memory while building our future, to be your partner in all things. I promise to keep choosing you, choosing us, choosing this beautiful, messy, imperfect life we're building together." They exchanged rings, simple gold bands that had belonged to Lucas's grandparents, offered by his mother with tears in her eyes. Emma came forward with the ring bearer's pillow, grinning so wide her face might split. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant said. "You may kiss your bride." The kiss was gentle, reverent, witnessed by the lake and the sky and the people they loved. When they broke apart, Emma was already hugging them both, and Lucas realized his face was wet with tears. The reception was held in the backyard, strings of lights casting a warm glow as the sun set. There was dancing and toasting and laughter, the kind that only comes when people have survived darkness together and made it to the other side. Lucas danced with Maya, with Emma, with his mother and sister, and all the women who'd helped raise him. But it was the moment when Emma pulled them both onto the dance floor, insisting they dance together as a family, that broke him open completely. They swayed together to soft music, Emma between them, and Lucas looked at his daughter and his wife and felt gratitude so fierce it was almost painful. "Mrs. Park would have loved this," Maya said softly. "She did love it," Emma said with absolute certainty. "She's here. Can't you feel her?" And somehow, incredibly, Lucas could. In the warmth of the evening, in the love surrounding them, in the family they'd built from ashes and grief and stubborn hope. Mrs. Park was there, her meddling spirit woven into every moment, every choice that had brought them to this point. Later, after Emma had fallen asleep on a blanket beneath the stars, after the guests had left and it was just Lucas and Maya sitting by the lake, they talked about the future, about the life they'd build together, the challenges they'd face, the joy they'd find in ordinary moments. "I'm still scared sometimes," Maya admitted, "that I'll wake up and this will have been a dream, that I'll mess it up beyond repair." "I'm scared too," Lucas said, "but I'm more scared of going back to who I was before you, of teaching Emma that fear is stronger than love." "We're going to have hard days," Maya said, "days where the grief comes back, days where we fight or doubt or struggle." "I know, but we'll have good days too, days like this one, days where Emma makes us laugh until we cry, days where we remember why we chose this." Lucas pulled her closer. "And when the hard days come, we'll face them together. That's what marriage means." "Is that what Mrs. Park would say?" "That's exactly what Mrs. Park would say." Lucas smiled, along with something about us making everything too complicated and needing to get out of our own way. Maya laughed, the sound carrying across the water. She really did know us better than we knew ourselves. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars reflect on the lake's surface. Somewhere in the distance, a loon called out, its cry echoing across the water. The same lake where Lucas had contemplated ending everything, where he'd first kissed Maya, where they'd scattered Mrs. Park's ashes, now bore witness to their beginning. "Thank you," Maya said finally. "For what?" "For being brave enough to try, for letting me into your life, into Emma's life, for choosing to live instead of just survive." She took his hand. "For showing me that love is worth the risk." "We both deserve the credit," Lucas said. "We chose each other. That's what matters." Inside the house, through the open window, they could hear Emma talking in her sleep. Something about dinosaurs and dandelions and wishes. Lucas thought about the man he'd been 4 years ago, hollowed out by grief, convinced he'd never feel whole again. He thought about the promises he'd made to Sarah, the life they'd planned to build together. And he realized that honoring those promises didn't mean staying frozen in the past. It meant living fully, loving completely, building a family that would have made Sarah proud. Emma had both her mothers now, one in memory, one in daily presence. She had love multiplied, not replaced. "We should probably go to bed," Maya said. "Emma will be up at dawn, wanting to hear all about the wedding, even though she was there." "In a minute," Lucas said. "I just want to sit here a little longer, to remember this feeling." "What feeling?" "Complete. For the first time since Sarah died, I feel complete." He turned to look at his wife, and felt tears prick his eyes again. "Mrs. Park gave us that. She saw what we couldn't see, forced us to face what we were avoiding, refused to let us waste our lives. She was a meddling, interfering, brilliant woman," Maya said, "and I'm so grateful she refused to mind her own business." They finally went inside, checked on Emma one last time, and climbed into bed together, husband and wife, partners, Two people who'd been broken in different ways and found healing in each other. As Lucas drifted off to sleep, Maya's head on his chest, he could have sworn he heard Mrs. Park's voice on the wind. "I told you so." The years that followed weren't perfect. Emma struggled in school sometimes, had friend drama and growing pains and moments where she missed Sarah with a ferocity that broke their hearts. Maya had patients who died badly, days where the weight of witnessing so much loss threatened to pull her under. Lucas dealt with slow seasons in his carpentry business, with the persistent whisper of doubt that suggested he didn't deserve this happiness. But they faced it all together. They built traditions: Sunday morning pancakes, evening walks to the dock, annual trips to scatter dandelion seeds on Mrs. Park's birthday. They learned each other's rhythms, how to fight productively and forgive completely, when to push and when to provide space. Emma grew from a gap-toothed 6-year-old into a confident teenager who still loved dinosaurs but had added astronomy and creative writing to her passions. She called Maya Mom without hesitation, talked to Sarah's picture on her nightstand about her day, and navigated the complexity of having two mothers with grace that astounded them both. On what would have been Mrs. Park's 80th birthday, they gathered at the lake as they did every year. Emma was 13 now, lanky and thoughtful, reading the letter Mrs. Park had left her for what must have been the 100th time. "She really did know everything," Emma said. "Look, she says here that by the time I'm reading this at 13, I'll probably be annoyed at how sappy this all sounds. But she also says I'll understand what she meant about love being worth the risk." "And do you?" Maya asked. "Understand?" Emma thought about it seriously. "Yeah, I mean, loving people is scary because they can leave. Mommy Sarah left, Mrs. Park left, but Daddy and you taught me that even when people leave, the love doesn't go away. It just changes shape, like Mrs. Park said." Lucas felt his throat tighten. Emma had grown into someone remarkable, empathetic and brave and wise beyond her years. Sarah would have been so proud. "I want to be like Mrs. Park when I grow up," Emma continued. "Someone who helps people find their way when they're lost. Someone who's not afraid to meddle if it means saving someone's life." "She didn't save our lives," Empaya said gently. "She just reminded us they were worth living." "Same thing," Emma said with absolute certainty. They scattered fresh dandelion seeds over the water, watched them drift on the breeze, and made their wishes. Lucas didn't wish for anything specific, just for more moments like this, more years with the family they'd built, more time to honor the gift Mrs. Park had given them. That night, as they walked back to the house, Emma between them, holding both their hands like she had as a child, Lucas felt the circle completing itself. The scared, broken man who'd sat across from Maya in a coffee shop all those years ago was gone. In his place was someone who'd learned that grief and joy could coexist, that loving again didn't dishonor what was lost, that sometimes the greatest act of courage was simply choosing to show up. Mrs. Park had known that, had seen it in both of them when they couldn't see it themselves, had refused to let them waste their lives hiding from possibility. And in the end, her greatest gift wasn't bringing them together. It was teaching them that love, in all its messy, complicated, terrifying glory, was always worth the risk. Always.